Coaching in Session.
Your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Now, sometimes I say I have to do something for the podcast, do something to let people know what the podcast is about. Because when people tune into Coaching in Session, of course, we can read the description, we can read what the podcast is about, and we can say, okay, I'm going to get some personal development, I'm going to get some self-help, I'm going to get some life coaching help, right? Of course, you come in, you're going to pick the specific episodes that are going to be most meaningful to you, and then you basically dive into the change that you need. You figure out what you need. And I like to say, when you go to like Walmart or you go to a grocery store, you're not going to just buy everything on the shelf, right? You're going to say, this is what I need. You're going to go to the specific areas in the aisles and you're going to say, this is what I need. Maybe you have a grocery list. Maybe you need bread. Maybe you need eggs. Maybe you need milk. Maybe you need some socks. And maybe you need a t-shirt. Now, if you go inside and you're buying baby strollers and you don't even have a baby and you're not even pregnant, or or basically no one you know has a baby, why in the world are you buying a baby stroller? So, of course, we need to be looking at, well, what are the things that connect my mind and my day, my actions to the things that are going to be most beneficial and powerful for me, to me. Now, I think of the idea of static electricity, right? If you rub some wool, if you get a balloon, you rub it against a carpet or something, there's going to be some type of electricity right there. Sometimes you might touch someone, right? And I'm not sure if you have ever got into the situation where you just started shocking everyone. You like, boom, I'm shocking you, I'm shocking you. And everyone you're touching, you're shocking. In a sense, right? That same concept of not, shocking people, but that that electric charge can be something that ignites something for you. When you have a gas stove, for example, you turn on the gas a little bit and then you kind of hit the ignition, or depending on what type of stove, you kind of pull it all the way to the igniter. It clicks a little bit, a spark comes out, and boom, now you have a fire, or your gas is now ignited so you can cook, or you can boil some water, or whatever you want to do with the gas. We are faced with, are we going to be that spark that creates the fire, or are we going to be the spark that just kind of, fades in the, night like a sparkler, right? It sparkles, it sparkles, it sparkles. But once that sparkling is done, like all of the gunpowder or the, fire, cracker or whatever it is, the sparkler juice, whatever. I don't know what you consider it, but either way, the sparkler is gone, is done. You can either light another sparkler, but you're gonna have the same results. So we need to do something with that sparkler in a sense. We need to say, all right, this sparkler is going to do something for me. Maybe it's going to light a candle. Maybe it's going to light my way, until I can get to a light switch. It does something for us. So we have to have some type of electric spark in a sense in our mind, in our body, in our heart, the anticipation for what comes after that spark. And so I wrote this article here, The Electric Mindset, Powering Your Life Through Coaching in Session. And basically, one of the main takeaways from this article is that we are all seeking growth in a sense. And in order for us to create something, we have to be that ignition, right? I think of when I did a lot of camping, I would bring my flint and my steel, and I would get some birch bark, or I would get some cotton and put some petroleum jelly on it. And it's a wonderful starting tool. Or I'll go out and I'll find some dry wood and I would scrape it off, and I would take my flint and my steel, and maybe I would like scrape off some of the flint so it would be there as the ignition. So when I would scrape it and create the spark, all of my tinder would, be able to smolder, and I would take that and I would say, okay, now I can create my fire. The same aspect is true in your life. There's something that you can do today that's going to create the spark for something bigger tomorrow. Now, for men, right, we can even, break it down by genders, right? Men, you might not think this, but one of the best things you can do, especially if you're like trying to level up, is to get your fitness game on track, right? Mike, but I'm broke. I got no money. Like my family is leaving me. Okay, great. We can look at that later. Let's get your fitness right first. Because once you get your fitness right, then the mind is going to be right. We talked about brain health versus mental health. All of these, things when it comes to like our mind, I mean, we are making some huge progress. And when I'm, trying to think of like if we're trying to, do some big changes in our life, we need to have the energy, we need to have the dedication, we need to have the discipline for us to get there. Because it is easy to say, okay, I'm going to focus on my money. Let me get some 6 jobs. Let me eat rice and beans, like what Dave Ramsey says. And it could work, right? You can, be deliberate in what you're doing and get the results that you're aiming for. The issue is not so much of, okay, well, I tried to do something and it didn't work. It's that we are that spark because sometimes when I would hit that flint and steel, no fire would happen. And I might have to strike it 2, 3, 4 times. And maybe the tinder that you're using is no good. Maybe it's damp, it's wet. It's, it's not the best to start the fire that you're looking for. And so sometimes you might have to get rid of all the things that you have been working for or toward and say, okay, let me start fresh. Let me, get a new piece of cotton. Let me get a new piece of wood or something. Now, of course, there's going to be things that can burn when it's wet. For example, birch is very good, even if it's wet. You can put it in water and it will still light because the oils in the birch are going to be flammable. So, of course, there's going to be things that you can ignite very easily. Now, those things are going to be your life coaches, your mentors, your guides. Those things are going to be able to give you the fire you need, no matter what type of environment you're in. Because it's easy to say, you know what? I've tried something and it didn't work. How many people have you known have tried something and then they say, like I tried it, but it didn't work. And I think sometimes like when people tell me something, they say, hey, I tried this and it didn't work. What you're trying to do is not going to work. It's pointless. And then I go, okay, thank you for telling me. Right. And I can learn from wisdom, right? There's a time to learn from wisdom and then there's a time to dig in. And so when I dig in and I know something is possible, because at the end of the day, if you can believe it could be possible, then it is going to be possible because you're going to do the things that are going to eventually lead to the result that you're looking for. We look at, Benjamin, like Benjamin Franklin with the, electricity and things like that. You might say, the man failed so many times, but at the same time, he can say, I just found a way that didn't work. And so you need to figure out what is working for you, what is not working for you. And maybe you're not good at a flint and steel. Maybe you're not good, at a bow and string. And maybe you're not good with a lighter or matches. And so you need to figure out what you're good at. And I find the best way to, light the fire that you will like to have in your life is just to get a torch from someone else and say, okay, thank you for the fire. And boom, if you ever have been to like a retreat or something, they sometimes would do this activity where, they'll give everyone a candle. And the candle, it's just a regular candle, it's a wax candle. One person will take a, lighter or a match and they'll light one candle. And then that person lights one, someone else's candle. And then those two people light two other people. Now you have 4 people lighting someone else's candle. Then you have 8. Then you have 16. Then you have 32. And before you know it, everyone in the room, now their candle is lit. But they did not have to wait for that one person with the lighter to say, I'm going to light your candle. I'm going to light your candle. I'm going to light your candle, right? This is the aspect of what is the electric mindset. The electric mindset is saying that if you find a group of individuals, a group of people that you can, cohort with in the sense of I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, I'm going to be around these people because these people are about change. These people are about personal development. And so when you dive into the community, when you dive into coaching a session, when you dive into the idea of possibilities and change, good things start to happen. Now, of course, we're not about, all right, things are going to happen the day of, the day after, maybe, right? Things take time. It is easy for us to say, like, I want change and I should get change. But sometimes change is going to take a lot of time. Sometimes when clients come for physical fitness, right? Wellness, they might be severely obese. They might have a lot of problems, health problems and things like that. And I tell them, day one, and go, listen, it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time to see some changes. And sometimes they say, okay, not a problem. But then it's so funny. 3 months in, they're like, wait, I'm not seeing the results. Like things are not going good, but the problem is we are literally building the foundation. And I warned them. I said, listen, we have to build a foundation. Where you are is not good today. Now, of course, we can go with the fad diets. We can put you on keto. We can put you on a carnivore diet. We can put you on fasting. We can get you to lose the weight, right? But if we do it in a way where it's so abrupt and the body's finding some type of, abrasiveness to it, you're going to rebound. And it happens more than I would like to admit, where people are always looking for the quick fix rather than doing the deliberate hard work. And so we look at people who have lost tremendous amounts of weight. They didn't do it with Ozempic, or they didn't do it with fad diets. They did it with hard work and dedication every single day, going into the gym, working out with a trainer, going on hikes, eating somewhat healthy or healthier than they have been. And before you know it, now we're having some results. So when you maybe are, very heavy, you can lose the weight or you can gain some muscle depending on what you want to do. Most people, they will say, yeah, I just want to lose the weight. And then of course they might have, if they do it too quickly, they're gonna have all this skin hanging off and things like that. And I say, hey, listen, you can go as fast as you want, you can go as slow as you want, as long as you give yourself the intention for committing or not stopping. And many people, they want the quick fix, they want to stop, right? And I always say, like, it's more difficult to stop and go than to keep on going, right? Because when you stop, right, the brain, oh man, is filled with all this good feelings of that feels good to stop. It feels good to get this sip of water and it feels good to relax. But then when you go again, your body's like, oh no, stop, because that felt good. And before you know it, you're stopping and you're stopping and you're stopping when you could have just kept on going. And one of the reasons why I think coaching sessions could be around for quite a bit is because there is always going to be that aspect of what is happening in our mind, what is happening in the world, what is happening, and what do we need to do in order to give some type of intention, some type of deliberate action to get the results that we're looking for once again. Now, in this article, I talk about the idea of, storytelling, of how we do it in coaching and session. I talk about how, growth happens. I talk about how you can imagine yourself becoming energized by just becoming inspired. The inspiration can come from different things. It can come from me sharing content. It can come from my guests coming on the podcast to talk about their journey and their story. And it could be inspirational because listening to me, of course, you're going to know me quite well. But then maybe you have a guest, and the guest is, someone who has a very similar background to you. Maybe it's the same career, maybe it's the same trajectory, maybe it's the same situations, and maybe it's alike and not exactly the same. Of course, we're not going to truly know what you have been through. And maybe you might look at someone's situation and say, whoa, your situation is way worse than mine. Let me show up, because if they can show up, I can show up. And so we look at all the different dynamics and aspects to what we can accomplish. And I would say, like, coaching and sessions is a podcast where you can take it and you can leave it, meaning you figure out what episodes work for you and what episodes do not work for you. Today's episode is more of creating the mindset of, we create a spark, and that spark is going to deliver us to the end goal. Now, that spark is going to be something that maybe has to take some time to get to our destination, how the sparks fly or something like that. We are going to get there at some point. We think of a firework when you light it, and it's shooting up, right? There's no beauty yet. There's no beauty yet. There's maybe just some fear because when it, pops off, it's a loud noise. But then all of a sudden it, crackles and it pops. And now we have these beautiful colors and maybe patterns. And we say, whoa, look at that firework. It's beautiful, right? But when it was in the tube, when it was in the ball, when it was shooting up and we saw some colors, we might have said, this is nothing compared to what it was when it stopped and it popped and it reached its height, when it reached the maximum. If we can reach that maximum, if we can reach our new heights in our life, we're going to say, well, we are in a better place. We can have a vantage point view. We can have the, mindset that, you know, the top is attainable, and we just have to get up there first, right? We have to keep on shooting. Same firework analogy. Sometimes the fireworks don't shoot straight up. Sometimes they shoot sideways. I remember when we were younger, my dad would get fireworks from friends, or we would go to the south of the border, and of course the fireworks are illegal. You're not supposed to have fireworks. We grew up in the ghetto, so the cops weren't really caring about if someone was shooting fireworks or not. So either or, right? We would shoot fireworks, and we would have neighbors yelling out the window, "Stop before I call the police," and whatever, right? Well, sometimes those fireworks that we lit off, they didn't go exactly where we wanted them to go. So sometimes we wanted them to go straight up, and they would go sideways, and they would do this, and they would do that. And luckily, nothing has happened or has ever happened. I mean, one time we had this big firework, is probably what they use like in the oceans for the firework shows. It's a big, like firework ball, and when we lit it, it was at an angle, and it like almost hit the home, like the house that we were living in or lived in, and it barely missed the house, maybe by like 2 feet, and it like went over down to Bridgeport, like near the park, and it like blew up, and it was beautiful, right? But we had to like run around the corner in order to see it, because we were looking up and not looking at, where we needed to be. And luckily, no one was right there in front of the firework. My dad was close to it, but, he was someone you would say is a trained professional, even though he wasn't. A couple fireworks he thought would go up, and they went around and spun. He had to run around and kick the firework. But, he's still alive to this day. He can live to tell the story of his firework debacles. And we can probably live to tell the story of the days when we don't show up, or the days when things don't happen exactly how we were expecting, right? So when we light the fire is doused, or when we are, trying to, get some help and the help doesn't come, or, like we get the wrong help, or we get the wrong advice. And before you know it, we are disheartened, right? Because it didn't turn out exactly how we wanted. But we make the best of our situations. We make the best of what we have and what we get. And so the electric mindset, once again, with this article, is talking about how you can power through coaching and session, how the podcast can be transformative to help you understand of all the different types of dynamics and circuits that are going to be the conduit for your success, right? Because we need people, in a sense, to create the network, to create, like, I guess you could say, the support we need. Because yes, you can support yourself to some level, to some degree, but what does that entail? Like we look at Steve Jobs, like a man who, was maybe the most prominent figure in Apple's success. He relied on people. He knew he needed to rely on those people. And he even talked about how, he created an environment where everyone was appreciated and everyone was, in a sense, admired, right? Because he said, you know, people were getting job offers at other places at triple the salary. And you have to ask yourself, how in the world are you going to turn down triple the salary? Well, one of the reasons why those people did for Apple was because they believed in the vision. They believed in something greater than just the money. In a sense, you have to figure out, what is that for you? And in coaching a session, there's more than, it's more than just the money. The people who come and they listen and they tune in, they're here for, yes, maybe a better life and a better lifestyle, but it's more than just the money. It's more than just the lifestyle. It's about creating some level of abundance, some level of prosperity, fulfillment, all of the things that will make you happy. Because again, you can win a bunch of money, you can climb the corporate ladder, you can maybe do the right things, and you can say, I did all of these things and I should be getting these results. But then maybe down the road, you realize that you went in the wrong direction. The things that you have been vying for are not bringing you about any type of happiness, or maybe even bringing about more difficulties in your life. I know people who have worked so hard and have given up everything, and they have felt happier because they have given up everything, because the things that they had weren't making them happy. So why hold on to the things that are? And here You can figure out what is going to be shocking you, what's not going to be shocking you. We can figure out what's going to be able to conduct the electricity and what's not. Because if you're trying to, put the, electricity on a piece of paper, you might get a fire, but, maybe that's not what you're looking for. Maybe you're looking for some level of connection. So we need a copper wire. We need to figure out how we can connect to the light. So the light switch that we're trying to connect to, let's figure out how that can create the spark that we need, how that can create the light source that's going to help brighten our path, lead our way, maybe in the darkness moments of our life. We have an opportunity today to say, hey, I'm a part of this journey. I'm a part of the mission, of the vision. And the mission is all based on who you want to be, not who I want you to be, not who your parents or your spouse or your kids. You get to decide. So do the work. Do the work to figure out what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. When you do, write it down. Become deliberate, get a coach, continue to listen to the podcast, motivational content. And from there, you're going to see that it's only a day at a time before you get to your final destination. Now, the final destination is not only about depth, it is about the goals that you envision that are going to create the most happiest moments in your life, the prosperity that you're looking for, the joy and the fulfillment is all around the corner. But we have to do the work. We have to be that conduit. We have to be that person that not only is the spark, but creates the fire for others as well. We can support people. And when you find a group of people that want to support each other, you have an easy aspect to say, hey, we're all working for a common goal. Maybe that common goal is just our well being. When you have so many people working on themselves, it is easy to say, look at that person do something amazing. I can do it too.